Now joining NTA News to give a better perspective on the latest gross domestic product and the Nigerian Labour Force survey is the Director, Institute of Capital Market Studies at the Nasarawa State University, Professor Uche Waleke. Welcome, Professor.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Now, Professor, in the second quarter, just a few months ago, to be precise, you were in our studios to explain the performance of Nigeria's economy when the GDP grew to 3.19% in the second quarter. Now it has jumped to 3.46% in the third quarter. What happened and what does it mean for the different sectors?
Well, I think it's cheering news to start with that we've had consistent real GDP growth rates since the first quarter. Recall the first quarter came in at 2.98%. Second quarter, as you rightly mentioned, 3.19%, and then now we are witnessing 3.46%. So one can say, it's been consistent. So, and if this trend continues, you should expect that the fourth quarter of 2024 will even witness further expansion, again in line with trend. If you look at the trend of GDP growth rate since 2019 in particular, apart from 2021, you will notice this kind of trend. You will notice that usually at the end of the year, you find the economy expanding, of course, in line with expectations, because the end of the year is when you expect expansion in economic activities. So it's cheering that we've had this, as I said, over the last 3 quarters, and particularly so when you find the non-oil sector, appearing to do well. The same thing with transport. You saw what happened in the case of transport. The transport sector, had a quantum leap from a negative 13% in Q2 to a positive 12% in Q3. We also witnessed improvements in the education, and health sector. The human capital sectors also experienced improvement. And if you could link this to, again, the performance of even inflation rates in July and August, because that's also within the third quarter, we noticed some moderation, in inflation rates, down from 34% in June, we had 33 in July and 32 in August. And again, we also saw that even the unemployment rate now, although for second quarter, the NBA is also reporting, a decline from 5.3 in first quarter to 4.3 in second quarter. So you now find that anytime you have this increase in GDP growth rate, you should also expect that, other things being equal, unemployment rate, will drop. So I think it's something cheering, and it needs to be sustained.
So let's quickly talk about, to wrap up, let's quickly talk about this unemployment rate now. Concerns remain about the data collection process. What do you think about it? How accurate? People are asking this question, that how credible are these figures?
Yes, of course, in relation to the unemployment figure, it's obvious that the MBS, changed methodology, and then we noticed this sudden drop in figures. As people will tell you that they don't appear to, reflect what we have on ground. But let me also quickly say this. I've said, yes, that GDP growth rate has been on the rise, but my concern, is more on the quality of the growth. It's not just about GDP growing, but what is the quality of that growth, And that is where I think the government should pay more attention, The quality of the growth that is in favor, for example, of services. Take, for example, the Q3 GDP growth rate. The banking and the financial sector, banking and insurance, grew by over 30%, And then compare that with the growth in the productive sectors, in the real sectors. Manufacturing sector is still weak at just 1.4%. Sorry, it's even 0.9%. Agri 1.4%. So if you take these two, particularly for manufacturing, you see that manufacturing has been on the decline since quarter one. So this tells you that the economic headwinds we have had, particularly the high rate of interest rate environment, and also the high exchange rates, have not been rubbing off positively on this sector. So it's important that going forward, the government, both the fiscal and monetary authorities should pay more attention to the productive sectors, to the agri sector, which contributed, by the way, 29%, to GDP in the last quarter. So agri sector and manufacturing sectors are very important. If the increase in GDP, if we must see it reflect on the lives of the ordinary Nigerian, because at the end of the day, it's not just the number that matters. It is the welfare of the people, that counts. And I think that can happen when we focus more attention on manufacturing and agriculture. Come to think of it, the financial sector, what's the job elasticity? How many people are employed in the banks? So no matter how much this sector grows, it may not really reflect in the lives of the ordinary Nigerians. So manufacturing is important, agriculture, very key, and that should be our focus.
Thank you very much, Professor. I've been speaking with Professor Uche Waleke, Professor of Capital Markets, on Nigeria's GDP growth. And of course, the professor says the country should focus more on manufacturing and the production sectors. Thank you, Professor.
My pleasure. Thank you.